In this CMC FIDIC contract management training course, we will explain the performance security obligations of a Yellow Book design and build contract.
You finally find like the perfect apartment. You know the one, you sign the lease, but before they hand over the keys, the landlord asks for a security deposit.
Right, yeah, the classic security deposit.
Exactly. And I mean, it makes sense. It's their safety net in case you accidentally, you know, put a hole in the drywall or just decide to skip town entirely.
Yeah, it really is the most fundamental mechanism of financial trust out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're putting your own liquid capital on the line to guarantee your future good behavior.
Right. But now I want you to scale that concept up, like way, way up.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine the apartment isn't an apartment at all. It's a $2 billion hydroelectric dam in a developing nation. Or maybe a massive international power plant.
A completely different ballgame.
Exactly. And that security deposit isn't just 1 month's rent. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of millions, locked away in a bank vault. So welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, our mission is to demystify the incredibly complex world of international construction contracts. We are looking specifically at the FIDI Yellow Book, which is like essentially the gold standard operating manual for these massive global projects. And we're pairing that with standard EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction contract templates.
Yeah, and our focus today is what the industry actually calls performance security.
Right.
Which usually takes the form of a bank guarantee or a surety bond.
Right.
And just like that apartment deposit, it's designed to ensure the contractor actually finishes the massive infrastructure job they promised to do and, well, finishes it properly.
But the mechanics of how this works at a billion-dollar scale are, they are intricate and completely unforgiving.
Absolutely brutal sometimes.
Yeah. So to really understand this financial ecosystem, we are going to examine the three main players holding this whole thing together. You've got the contractor who provides the security, the employer who holds it, and the issuer, usually the bank that actually pays it out.
Sounds like a solid roadmap.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the heavy lifter in this scenario, the contractor.
Yeah, the heavy lifting definitely begins with them because the contractor is the entity actually pouring the concrete and building the project.
Yeah.
So they are the ones who have to construct this massive financial shield.
Makes sense.
And the FIDIC rulebook outlines a very strict initial obligation here. According to subclause 4.2.1, the clock starts ticking the absolute moment the contractor receives the letter of acceptance.
Wait, like the very second they get the letter?
From that exact second.
Yeah.
They have exactly 28 days to deliver this performance security to the employer, and they have to send a copy to the engineer, too.
Wow. 28 days to secure what could be $50 or $100 million in backing? That is just a massive administrative sprint.
It's huge.
You can't just walk into a local credit union and ask for a $50 million guarantee.
No, definitely not. The rules actually require that this security must be issued by an entity and from within a country or jurisdiction that the employer explicitly approves of.
Right, which means a contractor is usually dealing with, like, Tier 1 global banks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the employer is building a critical piece of national infrastructure, right? They do not want a guarantee from some shell bank with no actual liquid assets or, a bank operating in a heavily sanctioned jurisdiction. They need a globally recognized financial institution.
It's basically the equivalent of needing to hand over a massive, completely unbounceable certified check before you even get the keys to the construction site.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
But here is the big vulnerability for the contractor.
Okay.
These infrastructure projects take years, sometimes decades. Supply chains break, natural disasters happen.
Sure.
If a project is delayed by 2 years, a standard bank guarantee might just hit its expiration date before the job is even close to done.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I guess what happens then? Does the security just expire and the employer loses their safety net?
Well, no. That is one of the biggest pitfalls in international construction, actually.
Yeah.
We can call it the validity trap.
The validity trap. I like that.
Yeah, under subclause 11.11, the contractor has this ongoing maintenance responsibility. They must ensure the security remains completely valid and enforceable until two very specific things happen.
Okay, what are they?
First, the performance certificate must be issued, meaning the physical work is fundamentally done and guaranteed. And second, the site must be entirely cleared of all the contractor's equipment, temporary structures, and, all the rubbish.
So they're literally on the hook until the absolute last dump truck drives off the dirt.
Exactly. And if the terms of their bank guarantees specify an actual expiry date on the calendar, say December 31st, but the project has been delayed because, I don't know, a cargo ship got stuck in a canal for months.
Right, which definitely happens.
Yeah. Then the contractor must proactively extend the validity of that security, and the timing is critical. They must finalize that extension at least 28 days before the original expiry date.
Wait, 28 days before it even expires?
Yes. If they fail to provide that proof of extension by day 28, they are instantly in breach of contract.
Wow. Which means the contractor is actively managing this massive financial instrument for the entire life cycle of the build. It doesn't just sit in a drawer somewhere.
Oh, not at all.
In fact, looking at the source material, I noticed that the security deposit isn't even a static number. There's this mechanism, we can call it the 20% rule.
Right, the variation rule.
Yeah, like if the employer suddenly demands a massive design change, say they decide to add a completely new cooling tower to the power plant, the contractor actually has to go back to their bank and increase the size of their own security deposit.
What's fascinating here is how the rulebook makes this security a living, breathing financial instrument. It physically shifts with the reality of the construction site.
That's wild.
Because over the course of a multi-year project, variations to the contract are just inevitable. The scope of the work expands, or maybe it shrinks.
Sure.
The text states that if variations push the accumulative price of the contract up or down by more than 20% of the originally accepted amount, the value of the performance security has to be adjusted to match.
I mean, that sounds like a total logistical nightmare for the contractor. If the project gets 25% more expensive because of that new cooling tower, the employer's financial risk just went up.
Exactly.
So the contractor has to go back to their global bank, probably put up even more of their own collateral and say, hey, I need you to increase my guarantee by another $10 million.
Yeah. The employer's safety net has to grow as the project grows. That is the fundamental logic. But the flip side of that is if the scope is drastically reduced, maybe they just cancel the cooling tower altogether, the contractor can theoretically decrease the amount of the security.
Which I imagine is highly desirable for the contractor.
Oh, incredibly desirable.
Right.
Because it frees up their global credit capacity to go bid on other big projects.
But decreasing it requires the employer's prior consent, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Because no employer is going to voluntarily shrink their own safety net without sending, like, a team of engineers to verify that the risk has actually disappeared.
Precisely. The contractor builds and maintains the shield, constantly ensuring it is the correct size, always active, and fully compliant with the ever-changing scope of the physical build.
Okay, so the contractor has spent weeks locking up tens of millions of dollars in a bank guarantee. They've handed over the shield.
Yep.
But that creates a terrifying vulnerability, doesn't it? The power dynamic entirely shifts to the employer. They are now holding the metaphorical nuclear codes.
They really are.
So the obvious question is, what stops the employer from just cashing in that bond to cover their own completely unrelated debts? The rulebook must have some strict tripwires built in. I imagine the employer can't just wake up in a bad mood and claim a $50 million bond because the concrete color looks slightly off.
Right. No, they definitely can't. The contract establishes very specific entitlements, tripwires, as you call them.
Okay.
Under subclause 4.2.2, the employer is strictly prohibited from claiming the money on a whim. The rules of engagement are clearly defined.
Like what?
Well, for example, we just talked about the validity trap. If the contractor fails to extend the validity of the security 28 days before it expires, that immediately entitles the employer to claim the full remaining amount of the bond.
Wow, just like that.
Yeah, simply to secure the cash before it literally evaporates on the expiration date.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a preemptive strike to keep the safety net intact. What are the other tripwires?
The employer can also claim if the contractor fails to pay a legally agreed upon amount they owe the employer. Or, critically, if the contractor fails to remedy defective work after being given proper formal notice.
Got it.
So if a major turbine is installed incorrectly, the employer issues a notice to fix it within a certain time frame. If the contractor ignores it, the employer can pull from the bond to hire someone else to fix it.
Right.
And finally, if the contractor's default is so severe that the entire contract is terminated, the employer can cash in the security to cover the catastrophic fallout.
Okay, but let me push back on that defective work tripwire for a second, because that sounds incredibly subjective.
It can be, yeah.
I mean, this sounds incredibly risky for the contractor. The employer is sitting on a massive pile of liquid cash. If a malicious employer runs into their own internal cash flow problems, Maybe their funding from the local government dried up. What stops them from just manufacturing a dispute?
That is the big question.
Like, they could point to a totally minor defect on site, claim the contractor didn't fix it fast enough, and then cash in the security unfairly just to inject $50 million into their own bank account.
Oh, that is a very real existential fear for international contractors. It keeps them up at night.
I bet.
But the FIDA framework builds in a massive deterrent against that exact kind of bad faith behavior. We can think of it as the penalty for abuse.
Okay, how does that work?
If the employer makes a claim under the performance security that they weren't actually entitled to make, the text explicitly states they must indemnify and hold the contractor harmless against all damages, losses, and legal fees resulting from that wrongful claim.
Oh, wow. That is a massive financial boomerang.
It is huge. It fundamentally alters the risk calculation for the employer.
Right.
If they pull the trigger without rock-solid justification, they aren't just ordered by an arbitration court to give the $50 million back 3 years later. They are paying for every single ounce of collateral financial damage that wrongful claim caused.
Which, for a global construction firm, could be astronomical. I mean, if an employer wrongfully cashes a bond, the contractor's banking relationships are instantly frozen.
Yep.
Their credit rating takes a massive hit. They might lose out on bidding for 3 other global projects because their capital is tied up in this mess.
Exactly. And the employer's on the hook for all of those lost business opportunities, all the banking penalties, and the incredibly expensive international arbitration fees.
It's a serious deterrent.
It forces the employer's legal team to be absolutely undeniably certain they are in the right before they demand that money.
That definitely levels the playing field. And I assume eventually this all has to come to an end. The employer can't just hold this financial sword of Damocles over the contractor's head forever.
No, there is a strict end of the road. The rulebook details the employer's final responsibility.
Okay.
Once that performance certificate is finally issued, proving the plant works perfectly, and the site is totally cleared, the employer has exactly 21 days to physically return the original performance security document to the contractor.
So what does this all mean? When you look at this dynamic from 10,000 feet, the employer is sitting in a position of immense leverage, holding the contractor's lifeline. But they are bound by these incredibly strict contractual tripwires.
Right.
And if they step out of line and abuse that leverage for a quick payday, the indemnification penalty will come back to destroy them financially in arbitration.
The tension is perfectly balanced by the text.
Yeah.
But that balance only really exists in the relationship between the contractor and the employer.
Right, because we haven't even talked about what actually happens when the employer presses the button. Like when they decide a tripwire has been crossed and they send a letter demanding the cash.
Yeah, that's where things get intense.
To understand the actual execution of this system, we have to look at our third player, the issuer. This is the Tier 1 global bank that wrote the guarantee in the first place.
Exactly. And to understand the bank's role, we have to shift our focus to the standard EPC contract template provided in our sources.
Okay.
The EPC template gives us a masterclass in what is called an on-demand bank guarantee. And the reality of an on-demand guarantee is genuinely terrifying for the contractor, but it is the ultimate comfort for the employer.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit shocking if you aren't familiar with high finance, because the bank holding this money isn't allowed to act as a judge at all.
No, they are not.
In fact, under standard EPC rules, they are practically forced to wear a blindfold.
That is the perfect way to describe it. The issuer's primary overarching responsibility under this template is to unconditionally and irrevocably pay the employer upon receiving a written demand.
Just immediately.
Yes. Unconditionally and irrevocably are absolute terms. The template explicitly states that the issuer must make the payment without referencing the contractor in any way.
Wow.
They must pay without inquiring into whether the underlying construction contract was actually breached. They do not send inspectors to the construction site. They do not read the engineering reports.
Well, let's paint a picture of how extreme this is. Imagine you are the contractor. You know for an absolute fact the employer is acting in bad faith. Like they are manufacturing a completely fake defect to steal your bond.
Right.
You are literally standing in the lobby of your bank in London or New York. You hand your banker a massive stack of irrefutable proof photos, sign engineer sign-off, drone footage, proving you did the work perfectly. You beg them, please do not pay them. They're violating the terms. And the bank's response is, we have to pay.
It's just wild.
Under the strict terms of this specific EPC bond template, the bank is legally obligated to ignore the contractor's pleas. The text explicitly says the bank must pay, despite any notice from the contractor begging them not to. That is so brutal, no questions asked.
None.
And they don't drag their feet either. I mean, the logistics of moving this kind of money are staggering when you look at the speed and immunity of the issuer.
Oh, the operational responsibilities placed on the bank are intense. According to the template, once the employer submits that written demand in the proper formatted language, the issuer must process and pay that demand within one single business day.
One business day. They have 24 hours to liquidate and transfer potentially $50 or $100 million across international borders.
Yep, and it must be paid in immediately available, freely transferable currency.
Right.
The bank has to pay this out of their own funds immediately, completely free and clear of any taxes, levies, or international deductions. They can't withhold, 20% because of a local tax dispute.
And the issuer has absolute immunity from the chaos happening on the ground, too. Like, the source material lists a litany of things that absolutely do not release the bank from their obligation.
Yes, it's a very comprehensive list.
If the employer and contractor secretly altered the contract without telling the bank still has to pay. If the employer gave the contractor a 6-month extension on the quiet, the bank still pays.
Exactly.
What if the contractor suddenly goes totally insolvent, bankrupt, and ceases to exist as a legal entity?
The bank still pays. The disability, incapacity, or total lack of authority of the contractor simply does not matter. The bank's obligation to the employer is essentially carved in stone.
Which feels entirely unfair to a layman. I mean, why would any contractor ever sign up for a system where their own bank is forced to act deaf and blind, ignore proof of fraud, and just hand over millions of dollars to a potentially hostile employer in 24 hours?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is literally the only way the macroeconomy works.
How so?
The entire point of performance security in global trade and infrastructure is liquidity and trust. Think about the alternative. What if the bank did act like a judge?
Okay, so if the employer makes a claim and the bank says, hold on, let us freeze the funds and send our own team of banking investigators to the BAM in South America to see if the concrete is actually cracked.
Right. And that investigation takes, 6 months?
At least.
During those 6 months, the employer has a broken power plant and absolutely no money to hire a replacement contractor.
Yeah.
The project halts entirely. The local government panics. Lawsuits are filed across 3 different countries.
Yeah, that would be a disaster.
The entire financial mechanism of international trade would completely freeze. The system only works if the employer has absolute, unshakable certainty that if things go wrong, they get their safety net instantly. The bank is not providing justice. The bank is providing trust in the form of sheer speed and reliability.
Which brings us full circle back to the rules we discussed earlier. The contractor just has to rely on that penalty of abuse. They have to accept that the bank will pay the employer today, and their only recourse is to take the employer to international arbitration tomorrow to get the money back, plus massive damages if the claim was actually fraudulent.
Right. The bank is not the justice system.
Yeah.
The underlying FIDI contract is the justice system. The bank is purely the mechanism of liquidity.
Wow. When you look at this whole ecosystem from 10,000 feet, it's a beautifully brutal, perfectly balanced triad.
It really is.
You have the contractor, whose job is to actively maintain this living, breathing financial shield, constantly adjusting it for design variations and desperately ensuring it never expires before the final piece of rubbish is cleared from the site.
Yep.
You have the employer, who holds the right to trigger that shield, knowing that if they pull the trigger falsely, they will be hit with a catastrophic indemnification penalty in arbitration.
A huge deterrent.
And finally, you have the issuer. The bank that acts as the blindfold-wearing, lightning-fast mechanism that actually moves the money unconditional, irrevocable, and completely divorced from the muddy, day-to-day disputes of the construction site.
It is a remarkable system of risk allocation. But it does leave me with one final provocative thought based on the rigid, inflexible nature of these agreements we've been analyzing.
Okay, let's hear it.
Everything we've discussed relies on a fundamentally functional world.
Right.
A world where contracts can be enforced in arbitration and banks can seamlessly wire millions of dollars across borders in 24 hours. But what happens when that system breaks down?
Ooh, interesting.
If the issuer must pay within one single business day, with absolutely no questions asked, what happens when a massive, unforeseen global crisis hits? What if a sudden global pandemic entirely shuts down the banking staff and halts every supply chain?
Or, what if a sudden overnight international sanction makes it literally illegal for that global bank to transfer the funds to the employer's country?
Exactly. When the irresistible force of a sudden geopolitical crisis meets the immovable object of an on-demand 24-hour guarantee, how do these ironclad financial structures survive when the real world entirely stops functioning?
That is the ultimate stress test, and it's definitely something to keep in mind the next time you see a massive skyscraper going up or a new international bridge being built.
Absolutely.
The physical engineering is incredible, but the hidden financial architecture holding it all together is just as complex. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, even a billion-dollar power plant starts with the exact same logic as your apartment security deposit. Until next time.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.